Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Dhammapada Stories, Part 2, Book 3, Story 2, The Mind Reader. In the country of the king of the Kosalans, it appears, at the foot of a mountain was a certain thickly settled village named Matika. Now one day, 60 monks who had received from the teacher a subject of meditation leading to arahatship came to this village and entered it for alms. Now the headman of this village was a man named Matika. When Matika's mother saw the monks, she provided them with seeds, served them with rice porridge, flavored with all manner of choice flavors, and asked them, "Reverend sirs, where do you desire to go?" "To some pleasant place, great lay disciple." Knowing that the monks were seeking a place of residence for the season of the rains, she flung herself at their feet and said to them, "If the noble monks will reside here during these 3 months, I will take upon myself the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts, and will perform precept day duties." The monks consented, thinking to themselves, "With her assistance, we shall be free from anxiety on the score of food, and shall be able to effect escape from existence." Matika's mother superintended the erection of a monastery to serve as their place of residence, presented it to them, and the monks took up their residence there. On a certain day, they met together and admonished each other as follows: "Brethren, it behoves us not to live the life of heedlessness, for before us stand the 8 great hells, with gates wide open, even as our own houses. Now we have come hither thus, having received a subject of meditation from the living Buddha, and the favor of the Buddhas cannot be won by a deceitful person, even though he walk in their very footsteps. Only by doing the will of the Buddhas can their favor be won. Therefore, be heedful. 2 monks may neither stand nor sit in any one place. In the evening, we shall meet together to wait upon the teacher, and early in the morning we shall meet together when it is time to go to the rounds for alms. At other times, 2 of us must never be together. If, however, a monk be taken sick, let him come to the monastery court and strike a bell. At the given signal, by the stroke on the bell, we will come together and provide a remedy for him." Having made this agreement, they entered upon residence. One day, while the monks were in residence, the female lay disciple took ghee, molasses, and other kinds of food, and in the evening, accompanied by a retinue of slaves and servants, went to the monastery. Seeing no monks, she asked some men, Where have the noble monks gone? My lady, they must be sitting in their own respective night quarters and day quarters. What must I do in order to see them? Men who knew about the agreement made by the congregation of monks said, "If you strike the bell, my lady, they will assemble." So she struck the bell. When the monks heard the sound of the bell, they thought to themselves, "Someone must be sick." And coming forth from their several quarters, they assembled in the monastery court. No two monks came by the same path. When the female lay disciple saw them approach one at a time, each from his own quarters, she thought to herself, "My sons must have had a quarrel with each other." After paying obeisance to the congregation of monks, she asked them, "Have you had a quarrel, reverend sirs?" "No, indeed, great lay disciple." "If, reverend sirs, there is no quarrel among you, how is it that, whereas in coming to our house you came all together, today you do not approach in this manner, but instead approach one at a time, each from his own quarters?" Great lay disciple, we were sitting each in his own cell, engaged in the practice of meditation. What do you mean, reverend sirs, by this expression, practice of meditation? We rehearse the 32 constituent parts of the body, and thus obtain a clear conception of the decay and death inherent in the body. Great lay disciple. But, reverend sirs, are you alone permitted to rehearse the 32 constituent parts of the body, and thus obtain a clear conception of the decay and death inherent in the body? Or are we also permitted to do this? This practice is forbidden to none, great lay disciple. Well then, teach me also the 32 constituents of the body, and show me how to obtain a clear conception of the decay and death inherent in the body. Very well, lay disciple, said the monks, learn them. So saying, they taught her all. She began at once to rehearse the 32 constituent parts of the body, striving thereby to obtain for herself a clear conception of the decay and death inherent in the body. So successful was she that even in advance of those monks she attained the 3 parts and the 3 fruits, and by the same parts won the 4 supernatural powers and the higher faculties. Arising from the bliss of the parts and the fruits, she looked with supernatural vision and considered within herself, at what time did my sons attain this state? Immediately she became aware of the following. All these monks are still in the bondage of lust, hatred, delusion. They have not yet, by the practice of ecstatic meditation, induced spiritual insight. Then she pondered, do my sons possess the dispositions requisite for the attainment of arahatship, or do they not? She perceived they do. Then she pondered, do they possess suitable lodgings, or do they not? Immediately she perceived that they did. Then she pondered, have they proper companions, or have they not? Immediately she perceived that they had. Finally she pondered the question, do they receive proper food, or do they not? She perceived they do not receive proper food. From that time on, she provided them with various kinds of rice porridge, and with all manner of hard food, and with soft food flavored with various choice flavors. And seating the monks in her house, she offered them water of donation, and presented the food to them, saying, Reverend sirs, take and eat whatever you desire. As the result of the wholesome food they received, their minds became tranquil, and as the result of tranquility of mind, they developed spiritual insight and attained arhatship, together with the supernatural powers. Then the thought occurred to them, the great female lay disciple has indeed been our support. Had we not received wholesome food, we should never have attained the paths and the fruits. As soon as we have completed our residence and celebrated the terminal festival, let us go visit the teacher. Accordingly, they took leave of the great female lay disciple, saying, Lay disciple, we desire to see the teacher. Very well, noble sirs, said she. So she accompanied them on their journey a little way, and then saying, Look in on us again, reverend sirs, and many other pleasant words, she returned to her house. When those monks arrived at Savatthi, they paid obeisance to the teacher and sat down respectfully on one side. The teacher said to them, Monks, you have evidently fared well, had plenty to eat, and not been troubled on the score of food. The monks replied, We have indeed fared well, reverend sir, had plenty to eat, and by no means been troubled on the score of food. For a certain female lay disciple, the mother of Matika, knew the cause of our thoughts, insomuch that the moment we thought, that she would prepare such and such food for us, she prepared the very food we thought of and gave to us. Thus did they recite her praises. A certain monk, who heard his brethren praise the virtues of their hostess, conceived a desire to go there. So obtaining a subject of meditation from the teacher, he took leave of the teacher, saying, Reverend sir, I intend to go to that village. And departing from Jetavana, he arrived in due course at that village and entered the monastery. On the very day he entered the monastery, he thought to himself, I have heard it said that this female lay disciple knows every thought that passes through the mind of another. Now I have been wearied by my journey, and shall not be able to sweep the monastery. Oh, that she would send a man to make ready the monastery for me. The female lay disciple, sitting in her house, pondering within herself, became aware of this fact and sent a man thither, saying to him, Go, make ready the monastery, and turn it over to him. The man went and swept the monastery and turned it over to him. Then the monk, desiring to have water to drink, thought to himself, Oh, that she would send me some sweetened water. Straightway the female lay disciple sent it. On the following day, early in the morning, he thought to himself, let her send me rice porridge with plenty of butter, together with some dainty bits. The female lay disciple straightway did so. After he had finished drinking the porridge, he thought to himself, oh, that she would send me such and such hard food. The female lay disciple straightway sent this also to him. Then he thought to himself, this female lay disciple has sent me every single thing I have thought of. I should like to see her. Oh, that she would come to me in person, bringing with her soft food, seasoned with various choice seasonings. The female lay disciple thought to herself, my son wishes to see me, desires me to go to him. So procuring soft food, she went to the monastery and gave it to him. When he had eaten his meal, he asked her, lay disciple, your name is Mother of Matika. Yes, dear son, you know the thoughts of another. Why do you ask me, dear son? You have done for me every single thing I have thought of. That is why I ask you. Many are the monks who know the thoughts of another. Dear son, I am not asking everyone else. I am asking you, lay disciple. Even under these circumstances, the female lay disciple avoided saying, I know the thoughts of another, and said instead, those who know not the thoughts of another, do thus, my son. Thereupon the monk thought to himself, I am in a most embarrassing position. They that are unconverted entertain both noble and ignoble thoughts. Were I to entertain a single sinful thought, she would doubtless seize me by the top knot, bag and baggage, as she would seize a thief, and do me harm. Therefore, I had best run away from here. So he said to the female lay disciple, I intend to go away. Where are you going, noble sir? To the teacher, lay disciple. Reside here for a while, reverend sir. I can no longer reside here, lay disciple. I must positively go away. With these words, he departed and went to the teacher. The teacher asked him, Monk, are you no longer residing there? No, reverend sir, I cannot reside there any longer. For what reason, monk? Reverend sir, that female lay disciple knows every single thought that passes through my mind. It occurred to me, they that are unconverted entertain both noble and ignoble thoughts. Were I to entertain a single sinful thought, she would doubtless seize me by the top knot, bag and baggage, as she would seize a thief and do me harm. That is why I have returned. Monk, that is the very place where you ought to reside. I cannot, reverend sir. I will not reside there any longer. Well then, monk, can you guard just one thing? What do you mean, reverend sir? Guard your thoughts alone, for thoughts are hard to guard. Restrain your thoughts alone. Do not concern yourself with aught else, for thoughts are unruly. So saying, he pronounced the following stanza. Thoughts are unruly and flighty, and flitter and flutter wherever they list. It is a good thing to tame the thoughts. Tamed thoughts bring happiness. When the teacher had admonished that monk, he dismissed him, saying, Go, monk, concern yourself with nothing else. Resume residence in that same place. And that monk, after being admonished by the teacher, went to that same place and concerned himself with nothing other than his thoughts. The great female lay disciple looked with supernatural vision. Seeing the elder, she determined by her own knowledge alone the following fact. My son has now gained a teacher who gives admonition and has returned once more. And forthwith she prepared wholesome food and gave it to him. Once, having received wholesome food, in but a few days the elder attained arahatship. As the elder passed his days in the enjoyment of the bliss of the paths and the fruits, he thought to himself, the great female lay disciple has indeed been a support to me. By her assistance, I have gained release from existence. And he considered within himself, has she been a support to me in my present state of existence only? Or has she been a support to me in other states of existence also? As I have passed from one state of existence to another in the rounds of existences. With this thought in mind, he recalled 100 states of existence, less one. Now in 100 states of existence, less one, that female lay disciple had been his wife, and her affections had been set on other men, and she had caused him to be deprived of life. When therefore the elder beheld the huge pile of demerit she had accumulated, he thought to himself, Oh, what wicked deeds this female lay disciple has committed. The great female lay disciple also sat in her house, considering within herself the following thought. Has my son reached the goal of the religious life? Perceiving that he had attained arahatship, she continued her reflections as follows. When my son attained arahatship, he thought to himself, this female lay disciple has indeed been a powerful support to me. Then he considered within himself, has she been a support to me in previous states of existence also, or has she not? With this thought in mind, he recalled 100 states of existence, less one. Now in 100 states of existence, less one, I conspired with other men and deprived him of life. When therefore he beheld a huge pile of demerit I thus accumulated, he thought to himself, Oh, what wicked deeds this female lay disciple has committed. Is it not possible that, as I have passed from one state of existence to another in the round of existences, I have rendered assistance to him? Considering the matter further, she called up before her mind 100th state of existence and became aware of the following. In my 100th state of existence, I was his wife. On a certain occasion, when I might have deprived him of life, I spared his life. I have indeed rendered great assistance to my son. and still remaining seated in her house, she said, "Discern further and consider the matter." By the power of supernatural audition, the monk immediately heard what she said. Discern further. He called up before his mind his 100th state of existence, and perceived that in that state of existence she had spared his life. Filled with joy, he thought to himself, "This female lay disciple has indeed rendered great assistance to me." Then and there, reciting the questions relating to the 4 paths and fruits, he passed into that form of Nibbana in which no trace of the elements of being remains. Book 3, Story 4, Nephew Sangharakkhita. The story goes that a certain youth of respectable family lived at Savatthi. After hearing a sermon of the teacher, retired from the world, was received into the order, made his full profession, and in but a few days attained Arahatship. He was known as Elder Sangharakkhita. When his youngest sister gave birth to a son, she named him after the elder, and thus he came to be known as Nephew Sangharakkhita. When Nephew Sangharakkhita came of age, he entered the order under the elder, and after making his full profession, entered upon residence for the period of the rains at a certain village monastery. Receiving 2 sets of robes, such as are worn by monks during the period of the rains, one 7 cubits long, the other 8 cubits long, he decided to present the robe 8 cubits long to his preceptor, and to keep the robe 7 cubits long for himself. When he had completed residence, he set out for the purpose of seeing his preceptor, and journeyed from place to place, receiving alms by the way. He arrived at the monastery before the elder arrived. Entering the monastery, he swept the elder's day's quarters, set out water for bathing the feet, prepared a seat, and then sat down, watching the road by which the elder would approach. When he saw the elder approach, he advanced to meet him, took his bowl and robe, seated the elder with the words, "Pray be seated, Reverend Sir," took a palm leaf fan and fanned him, gave him water to drink, and bathed his feet. Finally, he brought forth the robe, laid it at the elder's feet, and said, "Reverend Sir, pray wear this robe." Having so done, he resumed fanning again. Said the elder to the nephew, "Sangharakkhita, I have a complete set of robes. You wear this robe yourself." "Reverend Sir, from the moment I received this robe, I set my heart on giving it to you alone. Pray, make use of it." "Never mind, Sangharakkhita, my set of robes is complete. You wear this robe yourself." "Reverend Sir, pray do not refuse the robe, for if you wear it, great will be the fruit I shall receive thereby." Although the younger monk repeated his request several times, the elder refused to accept the present of the robe. So as the younger monk stood there fanning the elder, he thought to himself, "While the elder was a layman, I stood in the relation of nephew to him. Since he has been a monk, I have been his fellow resident. But in spite of this, he is not willing, as my preceptor, to share my possessions. If he is not willing to share my possessions with me, why should I longer remain a monk? I will become a householder once more. Then the following thought occurred to him. It is a hard thing to live the house life. Suppose I become a householder once more, how shall I gain a living? Finally the thought occurred to him. I will sell this robe 8 cubits long and buy me a she-goat. Now, she-goats are very prolific, and as fast as the she-goat brings forth young, I will sell them, and in this way accumulate some capital. As soon as I have accumulated some capital, I will fetch me a wife. My wife will bear me a son, and I will name him after my uncle. I will put my son in a go-kart, and taking son and wife with me, will go to pay my respects to my uncle. As I journey by the way, I will say to my wife, just bring me my son. I wish to carry him. She will reply, why should you carry this boy? Come, push this go-kart. So saying, she will take the boy in her arms, thinking to herself, I will carry him myself. But lacking the necessary strength to carry him, she will let him fall in the path of the wheels, and the go-kart will run over him. Then I will say to her, you would not even give me my own son to carry, although you were not strong enough to carry him yourself. You have ruined me. So saying, I will bring down my stick on her. Thus pondered the young monk as he stood fanning the elder. As he concluded his reflections, he swung his palm leaf fan and brought it down on the head of the elder. The elder considered within himself, why did Sangharakkhita strike me on the head? Immediately, becoming aware of every single thought that had passed through the mind of his nephew, he said to him, Sangharakkhita, you did not succeed in hitting the woman. But what has an old elder done to deserve a beating? The younger monk thought to himself, oh, I am ruined. My preceptor, it appears, knows every thought that has passed through my mind. What have I to do with the life of a monk any longer? Straightway he threw his fan away and started to run off. But the probationers and novices ran after him, caught him, and led him to the teacher. When the teacher saw those monks, he asked them, Monks, why have you come here? Have you captured a monk? Yes, Reverend Sir. This probationer became discontented and ran away, but we captured him and have brought him to you. Monk, is what they say true? Yes, Reverend Sir. Monk, why did you commit so grievous a fault? Are you not the son of a Buddha, the powers of whose will are ever active? And once, having retired from the world in the religion of a Buddha, like me, though you failed through self-conquest to win for yourself the title of one who has attained the fruit of conversion, or the fruit of the second path, or the fruit of the third path, or arahatship. Yet, for all that, why did you commit so grievous a fault as this? I am discontented, Reverend Sir. Why are you discontented? In reply, the younger monk related the whole story of his experiences, from the day he received the robes worn by monks in residence to the moment when he struck the elder on the head with his palm leaf fan. Reverend Sir, said he, that is why I ran away, said the teacher. Come, monk, be not disturbed. The mind has a way of dwelling on subjects that are far off. One should strive to free it from the bonds of lust, hatred, and delusion. So saying, he pronounced the following stanza. Thoughts wander afar, wander alone, are bodiless, seeking a hiding place. Whoso restrain their thoughts will obtain release from the bond of Mara. Book 3, Story 5, Cittahatta Thera. The story goes that a certain youth of respectable family, living at Savatthi, went into the forest to look for an ox that was lost. When it was midday, he saw the ox and released the herds, and being oppressed by hunger and thirst, thought to himself, I can surely get something to eat from the noble monks. So he entered the monastery, went to the monks, bowed to them, and stood respectfully on one side. Now, at that time, the food which remained over and above to the monks who had eaten lay in the vessel used for refuse. When the monks saw that youth, exhausted by hunger as he was, they said to him, Here is food, take and eat it. When a Buddha is living in the world, there is always a plentiful supply of rice porridge, together with various sauces and curries. So the youth took and ate as much food as he needed, drank water, washed his hands, and then bowed to the monks and asked them, Reverend sirs, did you go to some house by invitation today? No, lady disciple. Monks always receive food in this way. The youth thought to himself, no matter how busy and active we may be, though we work continually, both by night and by day, we never get rice porridge so deliciously seasoned. But these monks, according to their own statement, eat it continually. Why should I remain a layman any longer? I will become a monk. Accordingly, he approached the monks and asked to be received into the order. The monks said to him, Very well, lay disciple, and received him into the order. After making his full profession, he performed all the various major and minor duties, and in a few days, sharing in the rich offerings which accrue to the Buddhas, he became fat and well-liking. Then he thought to himself, why should I live on food obtained by making alms rounds? I will become a layman once more. So back he went and entered his village. After working in his house for only a few days, his body languished. Thereupon he said to himself, "Why should I endure this suffering any longer? I will become a monk." So back he went and became a monk again. But after spending a few days as a monk, becoming discontented once more, off he went again. Now when he was a monk, he was a helper of the other monks. After a few days, he became discontented again and said to himself, "Why should I live the life of a layman any longer? I will become a monk." So saying, he went to the monks, bowed, and asked to be received into the order. Because he had helped them, the monks received him into the order once more. In this manner, he entered the order and left it again 6 times in succession. The monks said to themselves, "This man lives under the sway of his thoughts." So they gave him the name thought-controlled elder Cittahatta. As he was thus going back and forth, his wife became pregnant. The 7th time, he returned from the forest with his farming implements. He went to the house, put his implements away, and entered his own room, saying to himself, "I will put on my yellow robe again." Now his wife happened to be abed and asleep at the time. Her undergarment had fallen off. Saliva was flowing from her mouth. She was snoring. Her mouth was wide open. She appeared to him like a swollen corpse. Grasping the thought, all that is in this world is transitory, is involved in suffering, he said to himself, "To think that because of her, all the time I have been a monk, I have been unable to continue steadfast in the monastic life." Straightway, taking his yellow robe by the hem, he ran out of the house, binding the robe about his belly as he ran. Now his mother-in-law lived in the same house with him. When she saw him departing in this wise, she said to herself, "This renegade, who but this moment returned from the forest, is running from the house, binding his yellow robe about him as he runs, and is making for the monastery. What does this mean?" Entering the house and seeing her daughter asleep, she knew at once it was because he saw her asleep that he became disgusted and went away. So she shook her daughter and said to her, "Rise, hag, your husband saw you asleep, became disgusted and went away. You will have him no more for your husband henceforth. Begone, mother. What matters it whether he has gone or not? He will be back again in but a few days." As Cittahatta proceeded on his way, repeating the words, "All that is in this world is transitory, is involved in suffering," he obtained the fruit of conversion. Continuing his journey, he went to the monks, bowed to them, and asked to be received into the order. "No," said the monks, "we cannot receive you into the order. Why should you become a monk? Your head is like a grindstone. Reverend sirs, receive me into the order just once." Because he had helped them, They received him into the order. After a few days, he attained arahatship, together with the supernatural faculties. Thereupon they said to him, Brother Cittahatta, doubtless you alone will decide when it is time for you to go away again. You have tarried here a long time, while this time. Reverend sirs, when I was attached to the world, I went away. But now I have put away attachment to the world. I have no longer any desire to go. The monks went to the teacher and said, Reverend sir, we said such and such to this monk, and he said such and such to us in reply. He utters falsehood, says what is not true. The teacher replied, Yes, monks, when my son's mind was unsteady, when he knew not the good Dhamma, then he went and came. But now he has renounced both good and evil. So saying, he pronounced the following stanzas. He whose heart abides not steadfast, he who knows not the good Dhamma, he whose faith wavers, such a man lacks perfect wisdom. He whose heart is unwetted by the rain of lust, he whose heart is unsinged by the fire of ill will, he who has renounced both good and evil, he who is vigilant, such a man has nothing to fear. Now, one day, the monks began a discussion. Brethren, grievous indeed are these evil passions of ours. So noble a youth as this, predestined to attain arahatship, swayed by evil passions, became a monk 7 times, and 7 times returned to the world. The teacher heard them discussing this matter, went at an opportune moment, entered the hall of truth, sat down in the seat of the Buddha, and asked them, Monks, what is it you are sitting here now talking about? When they told him, he said, It is precisely so, monks. The evil passions are indeed grievous. So they could take on material forms, so that they could be put away somewhere. A world would be too restricted for them, and the heaven of Brahma too low for them. There would not be room for them anywhere. They bewilder even one like me, possessed of wisdom, a being of noble birth. Who can describe their effect on others? For in a previous state of existence, even I, all because of half a pine pot of seed beans and a blunt spade, became a monk 6 times and returned to the world 6 times. When did that happen, Reverend Sir? Do you wish to hear about it, monks? Yes, Reverend Sir. Well then, listen. So saying, the teacher related the following. Story of the past. Kudala and his spade. Once upon a time, when Brahmadatta reigned at Benares, there dwelt at Benares a certain wise man named Spade Sage, Kuddala. He became a monk of a heretical order and dwelt for 8 months in the Himalaya country. One night, during the season of the rains, when the ground was wet, he thought to himself, I have in my house half a pint pot of seed beans and a blunt spade. My seed beans must not be lost. So he returned to the world, tilled a certain plot of ground with his spade, planted that seed, and put a fence around it. When the beans were ripe, he pulled them up, and setting aside a pint pot of beans for seed, he used the rest for food. Then he thought to himself, why should I live the life of a layman any longer? I will reside in the Himalaya country for 8 months more as a monk. So he departed from his house and became a monk once more. In this manner, all because of half a pint pot of seed beans and a blunt spade, he became a monk 7 times, and 7 times returned to the world. The 7th time, he thought to himself, 7 times I have returned to the world after becoming a monk, all because of this blunt spade. I will throw it away somewhere. So he went to the bank of the Ganges, carrying the pine pot of seed beans and the blunt spade with him. As he stood on the bank of the river, he thought to himself, if I see the spot where these things fall, I may be tempted to descend into the river and fish them out. Therefore, I will take care to throw them in such a way that I shall not see where they fall. Accordingly, he wrapped the pine pot of seeds in a cloth, tied the cloth to the handle of the spade, and grasped the spade by the tip of the handle. And standing there on the bank of the Ganges, he closed his eyes, whirled the spade 3 times round over his head, and flung it into the Ganges. Then he faced about so that he might not see where the spade fell, and cried 3 times with a loud voice, I have conquered! I have conquered! Just at that moment the king of Benares, who had returned from suppressing disorder on his frontier and pitched camp on the bank of the river and descended into the stream to bathe, heard the cry. Now the cry, I have conquered, is a cry kings do not like to hear. The king of Benares therefore went to Cittahatta and said, I have but just put my enemy under my feet and have returned with a thought in my mind. I have conquered, but you have just cried out, I have conquered, I have conquered. What do you mean by this? Said Spade Sage, you have conquered bandits that are without. The victory you have won will have to be won again. But I have conquered an enemy that is within the bandit of desire. He will never conquer me again. Victory over him is the only true victory. So saying, he pronounced the following stanza. That victory is no true victory, which must be won again. That victory is true victory, which need not be won again. At that moment, gazing upon the Ganges and meditating upon the element of water, Spade Sage acquired specific attainment, whereupon he rose from the ground and sat cross-legged in the air. The king, after hearing the religious instruction of the great being, paid obeisance to him, requested him to receive him as a monk, and became a monk. Together with his entire force, his retinue extended for a distance of a league. Another king, who was his neighbor, hearing that he had become a monk, thought to himself, I will seize his kingdom, and went thither, intending to do so. But when he saw that prosperity empty, he thought to himself, a king who would give up so beautiful a city to become a monk would certainly not become a monk to his own hindrance. I also ought to become a monk. Therefore, he went to where the great being was, paid obeisance to him, requested him to receive him as a monk, and became a monk, together with his retinue. In like manner, 7 kings in all became monks. Their hermitage was 7 leagues long. 7 kings renounced their worldly possessions and became monks. Having won over all his numerous company, the great being lived the holy life and went to the heaven of Brahma. End of story of the past. When the teacher had finished this lesson, he said, monks, at that time I was Spade Sage. Learn from this story how grievous the evil passions are. Book 3, Story 6, Origin of Metta Sutta. At Savatthi, we are told 500 monks obtained from the teacher a subject of meditation leading to arahatship, and with the intention of devoting themselves to the practice of meditation, went 100 leagues to a large village. When the inhabitants of the village saw them, they provided them with seats, served them with choice rice porridge and other kinds of food, and asked them, Reverend sirs, where are you going? The monks replied, to some pleasant place. Then said the monks of the village, Reverend sirs, reside right here during these 3 months. Under your direction, we will abide steadfast in the refuges and will keep the precepts. The villagers, having obtained the consent of the monks, said, Reverend sirs, there is a large forest grove not far from this place. take up your residence there. So saying, the villagers dismissed the monks, and the monks entered the forest. Thereupon, virtuous spirits dwelling in that forest grove thought, a company of monks have come to this forest grove. If, however, these monks dwell in this forest grove, it will be improper for us longer to take son and wife, climb the trees, and live there. Accordingly, they came down from the trees, seated themselves on the ground, and reflected. If the monks remain in this place tonight, they will surely leave tomorrow morning. But on the following day also, the monks, after taking their rounds for alms in the village, returned again to that same forest grove. Thereupon the spirits thought to themselves, someone must have invited the company of monks for tomorrow, and for this reason they have returned. Today they will not depart, but tomorrow they will surely depart. Reasoning in this way, they sat for a fortnight on the ground. Then they thought to themselves, it is doubtless the intention of the monks to remain right here during these 3 months. But if they do remain here, it will be improper for us to take son and wife, climb trees, and live here for 3 months. Moreover, it will greatly weary us to sit here on the ground. By what means can we best drive these monks away? Accordingly, in the night quarters, in the day quarters, and at the end of the cloisters, the spirits caused the monks to see bodiless heads and headless trunks, and to hear the voices of demons. At the same time, the monks were afflicted with sneezing and coughing, and suffered from many other ailments besides. They said to each other, brother, what ails you? I am afflicted with sneezing. I am afflicted with coughing. Brethren, today, at the end of the cloister, I saw a bodiless head. Brethren, in the night quarters, I saw a headless trunk. Brethren, in the day quarters, I heard a demon's voice. We ought, by all means, to leave this place. This is an unpleasant place for us. Let us go to the teacher. Accordingly, they departed from the forest grove, went in due course to the teacher, paid obeisance to him, and sat down respectfully on one side. Said the teacher to them, monks, were you unable to dwell in that place? Even so, reverend sir. While we dwelt there, such fearful objects as these presented themselves to our sight. The place was so unpleasant for us that we decided we must leave it. Therefore, we have abandoned it and have returned to you. Monks, to that very place you ought to return. We cannot do so, reverend sir. Monks, when you went there the first time, you went without a weapon. Now, you must take a weapon with you when you go. What kind of weapon, reverend sir? Said the teacher. I will give you a weapon, and the weapon which I give you, you are to take with you when you go. Then he recited the entire Metta Sutta, beginning as follows. This must he do, who is skilled to seek his own spiritual good. Once he has attained the region of tranquility, he must be honest and upright and meek and mild and free from vaingloriousness. Having recited this sutta, he said, "Monks, recite this sutta from the forest grove, outside the hermitage, and then you may enter within the hermitage." With these instructions, he dismissed them. They paid obeisance to the teacher, started out, and in due course arrived at that forest grove. Reciting the sutta in unison, outside the hermitage, they entered the forest grove. Thereupon the spirits residing throughout the forest grove conceived friendly feelings in their hearts for the monks, came forth to meet them, asked the monks to let them take their bowls and ropes, offered to rub their hands and feet, posted strong guards on all sides, and sat down together with them. Not a demon's voice was heard. The hearts of those monks became tranquil. Sitting in their night quarters and day quarters, they strove to attain insight, fixing in their minds the thought of the decay and death inherent in their bodies, and reflecting upon the thought, by reason of its fragile and unstable nature, this body is like a potter's vessel. They develop spiritual insight. The supremely enlightened, even as he sat in the perfumed chamber, knowing that those monks had begun to develop spiritual insight, addressed them. "It is even so, monks. This body, by reason of its fragile and unstable nature, is precisely like a potter's vessel." So saying, he sent forth a luminous image of himself, and although 100 leagues away, appearing to be seated face to face with them, present in visible form, diffusing 6 colored rays of light, pronounced the following stanza. Realizing that this body is fragile as a jar, establishing these thoughts as firm as a city, one should attack Mara with the weapon of wisdom. One should stand guard over his conquest. One should never rest. Book 3, Story 7, The Cruel Fowler. A certain youth of station who lived at Savatthi heard the teacher preach the Dhamma, yielded the breast to religion, retired from the world, and after admission as a full member of the order, became known as Elder Tissa. As time went on, an eruption broke out on his body. At first appeared pustules no bigger than mustard seeds. But as the disease progressed, they assumed successively the size of kidney beans, chickpeas, jujube seeds, emblig, myrobalance, and vilva fruits. finally they burst open, and his whole body became covered with open sores. In this way, he came to be called Elder Puttigatta Tissa. After a time, his bones began to disintegrate, and no one was willing to take care of him. His under and upper garments, which was stained with dried blood, looked like net cakes. His fellow residents, unable to care for him, cast him out, and he lay down on the ground without a protector. Now the Buddhas never failed to survey the world twice a day. At dawn they survey the world, looking from the rim of the world towards the perfumed chamber, taking cognizance of all they see. In the evening they survey the world, looking from the perfumed chamber and taking cognizance of all that is without. Now at this time, the elder Puttigatta Tissa appeared within the net of the exalted one's knowledge. The teacher, knowing that the monk Tissa was ripe for arahatship, thought to himself, this monk has been abandoned by his associates. At the present time, he has no other refuge than me. Accordingly, the teacher departed from the perfumed chamber, and pretending to be making the rounds of the monastery, went to the hall where the fire was kept. He washed the boiler, placed it on the brazier, waited in the fire room for the water to boil, and when he knew it was hot, went and took hold of the end of the bed where that monk was lying. At that time, the monk said to the teacher, "Pray, depart, reverend sir. We will carry him in for you." So saying, they took up the bed and carried Tissa into the fire room. The teacher caused a measure to be brought and sprinkled hot water. He then caused the monks to take Tissa's upper garment, wash it thoroughly in hot water, and lay it in the sunshine to dry. Then he went, and taking his stand near Tissa, moistened his body with hot water, and rubbed and bathed him. At the end of his bath, his upper garment was dry. The teacher caused him to be clothed in his upper garment, and caused his undergarment to be washed thoroughly in hot water, and laid in the sun to dry. As soon as the water had evaporated from his body, his undergarment was dry. Thereupon Tissa put on one of the yellow robes as an undergarment, and the other as an upper garment, and with body refreshed and mind tranquil lay down on the bed. The teacher took his stand at Tissa's pillow and said to him, "Monk, consciousness will depart from you. Your body will become useless, and like a log will lie on the ground." So saying, he pronounced the following stanza: "Alas, this body will not last long. Discarded it will lie upon the earth devoid of consciousness, useless as a rotten log. At the conclusion of the lesson, Elder Cittahatta Thera attained arahatship and passed into Nibbana. The teacher performed the funeral rites over his body and, taking the relics, caused a shrine to be erected. The monks asked the teacher, "Reverend sir, why was Elder Cittahatta Thera reborn?" "He has passed into Nibbana, monk." "Reverend sir, how did it happen that such a monk, predestined to attain arahatship, came to have a diseased body? Why did his bones disintegrate? Through what deed in a former birth did he obtain the dispositions requisite for the attainment of arahatship?" Monks, all these things happened solely because of deeds he committed in a previous existence. "But Reverend sir, what did he do?" "Well then, monks, listen. Story of the past. The Cruel Fowler. In the dispensation of the Buddha Kassapa, Tissa was a fowler. He used to catch birds in large numbers, and most of these he served to royalty. Most of those he did not give to royalty, he used to sell, fearing that if he killed and kept the birds he did not sell, they would rot, and desiring to prevent his captive birds from taking flight, he used to break their leg bones and wing bones and lay them aside, piling them in a heap. On the following day, he would sell them. When he had too many, he would have some cooked also for himself. One day, when well-flavored food had been cooked for him, a monk who was an arahat stopped at the door of his house on his round for alms. When Tissa saw the elder, he made his mind serene and thought, "I have killed and eaten many living creatures. A noble elder stands at my door, and an abundance of well-flavored food is in my house. I will therefore give him alms." So he took the monk's bowl and filled it, and having given him well-flavored food, saluted the monk with the 5 rests and said, "Reverend sir, may I obtain the highest fruit of the Dhamma you have seen?" Said the elder, returning thanks, "So be it." Monks, it was through the meritorious deed Tissa then did that this fruit accrued to him. It was because he broke the bones of birds that his members became diseased and his bones disintegrated. It was because he gave well-flavored food to the arahat that he attained arahatship. Book 3, Story 8. Nanda The Herdsman. At Savatthi, we are told, the householder Anathapindika had a herdsman named Nanda who tended his herd of cattle. Nanda was rich, possessed of abundant wealth, possessed of ample means of enjoyment. We are told that as did Kenya, the ascetic of the matted flocks, by retiring from the world, so did Nanda by tending herds and by managing the king's revenue, preserve his own wealth. Again and again Nanda, taking the 5 products of the cow, went to the house of Anathapindika, beheld the teacher, listened to the Dhamma, and invited the teacher to come to his own residence. For some time the teacher waited for Nanda's wisdom to ripen, and therefore refrained from going. But one day, making his rounds for alms, accompanied by a large company of monks, perceiving that his wisdom had ripened, he withdrew from the road and sat down under a certain tree near Nanda's place of abode. Nanda went to the teacher, paid obeisance to him, greeted him in a friendly manner, invited the teacher to accept his hospitality, and for 7 days gave the congregation of monks the choicest of the 5 products of the cow. On the 7th day, the teacher, returning thanks, delivered in orderly sequence the discourse on almsgiving and other discourses. At the conclusion of the discourse, Nanda the herdsman was established in the fruit of conversion. Thereupon he took the bowl of the teacher and accompanied him on his way for a considerable distance. Then said the teacher, "Halt, disciple." Straightway Nanda obeyed the teacher's command, paid obeisance to him, and turned back. At that moment a hunter shot an arrow and killed Nanda. The monks saw this as they were returning, and went and said to the teacher, "Reverend sir, because of your coming here, Nanda the herdsman gave abundant gifts, accompanied you on your journey, and was killed as he returned. Had you not come, his death would not have occurred." The teacher replied, "Monks, whether I had gone or not, whether Nanda had gone to the 4 cardinal points or to the 4 intermediate points, he could not possibly have escaped from death. For what neither thieves nor enemies do, this a corrupt mind attached to falsehood does to living creatures here in the world." So saying, he pronounced the following stanza: "Whatever a hater may do to a hater, or an enemy to an enemy, an ill-directed mind will do a man yet more harm." The monks, however, did not ask the teacher what the disciple had done in a former birth, and therefore the teacher said nothing about it. Dhammapada Stories, Part 2, Book 4, Story 2. Just like a mirage, a bubble. A monk, we are told, obtained the subject of meditation from the teacher and entered the forest for the purpose of practicing meditation. But when, after striving and struggling with might and main, he was unable to attain arahatship, he said to himself, I will ask the teacher to give me a subject of meditation better suited to my needs. With this thought in mind, he set out to return to the teacher. On the way he saw a mirage. Said he to himself, even as this mirage seen in the season of the heat appears substantial to those that are far off, but vanishes on nearer approach, so also is this existence, unsubstantial by reason of birth and decay. And fixing his mind on the mirage, he exercised himself in meditation on the mirage. On his return, wearied with the journey, he bathed in the river Asiravati and seated himself in the shade of a tree on the bank of the river near a waterfall. As he sat there watching great bubbles of foam rising and bursting from the force of the water, striking against the rocks, he said to himself, just so is this existence also produced, and just so does it burst. And this he took for his subject of meditation. The teacher, seated in his perfumed chamber, saw the elder and said, Monk, it is even so, like a bubble of foam or a mirage is this existence. Precisely thus is it produced, and precisely thus does it pass away. And when he had thus spoken, he pronounced the following stanza. He who knows that this body is like foam, he who clearly comprehends that it is of the nature of a mirage, such a man will break the flower-tipped arrows of Mara and will go where the king of death will not see him. At the conclusion of the stanza, the elder attained arahatship, together with the supernatural faculties, and returned praising and glorifying the golden body of the teacher.